Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all keeping well, safe. Claudia Trotter has very kindly agreed to give a presentation today for us from Mates in Mind. I think it's quite a topical subject at the minute.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Tuesday. So my name's Claudia. I am one of the support managers at Mates in Mind. My role is I'm one of the main points of contact for our supporters. Our supporters are those that are sort of undertaking our mental health program within their organisation. I handle any queries they might have and help them plan and implement their mental health strategy moving forward. This presentation is sort of generally about improving workplace mental health. This gives you a bit of an overview of the Mates in Mind programme and what we do as a charity. There's three main things, which is we want to raise awareness, address the stigma of poor mental health, and also promote positive well-being throughout the workplace. Some statistics to start off with on the impact of mental health on individuals. So as you can see here, 1/6 of working age population reported a mental health condition, 300,000 jobs lost per year due to poor mental health. And the suicide rate is 3.7 times higher than the national average in male labourers. Hence why we predominantly we're focused in construction. And the number one killer of men under 45 years old is death by suicide. So in 2017, 2018, stress, depression or anxiety accounted for 44% of all work-related illnesses, 57% of all working days lost, 15.4 million working days lost, and 8.4 billion pounds cost to the UK economy. So obviously reading through these, it becomes really apparent why we need to tackle mental health. It impacts your business in a number of ways in terms of lost productivity, absenteeism when someone's attending work and they shouldn't really be there, they're ill, retaining staff and avoiding those recruitment costs, and also meeting duties of care and reputation as a business as well, which also sort of ties over into getting new staff on, because it's more appealing if a workplace is seen to take mental health more seriously, I think, for people. So it should help with that side of things. But essentially we want to create a culture where everyone feels supported and safe and everyone's looking out for each other at the end of the day. So common mental health issues at work. So these are some ones that commonly come up with people calling in to us as well. So obviously financial concerns, family difficulties, cultural leadership issues, relationships at work, workload, job control, travel, isolation, job security and physical health, especially at the moment as well with everything going on with COVID. So any one of us at any time can experience short-term distress and sort of low-level daily stressors. But 1 in 6 employees in any week will actually experience common mental health issues, and then 1 in 100 will go on to experience mental illness. So it's good to catch it early and kind of be aware of these issues. Now we've got a stress graph. It says, I'm not sure if you can see, it says performance on the left-hand side there. So as you can see, when someone's experiencing the minimum amount of stress, they're often quite bored, relaxed, and you don't tend to get the best performance there from your workforce. The optimum amount, when people are in that stage, it tends to mean that they feel comfortable, they've got the right amount of pressure onto them, so it's not too much. It's within their remit of what they can help with. Beyond that, you tend to get more strain. You enter into a more high stress environment, which obviously means that people are tired, they're making poor judgments, poor decision making, and this can turn into obviously a very low performance if someone's burnt out and can then experience a breakdown, and that really affects their physical and mental condition, and that's when you get the long absences and things like that. So really want to obviously keep it in the optimum stage and be aware of any problems that could turn into bigger problems further down the line. So these are some statistics around COVID-19 at the moment. So 67% report higher levels of stress, 57% have greater anxiety, 54% are more emotionally exhausted, 50% feel they are more irritable, and then 42% report that overall mental health has declined. At least 500,000 more people in the UK may experience mental ill health as a result of COVID-19. So this is why we're seeing more, as a mental health charity, we are seeing more issues kind of arise at the moment with our current supporters, and more people are sort of reaching out, but they're reaching out quite far down the line. So they, that's when you have to have those absences off work, and you get the real quite serious poor mental health. So that's why it's when we talk about culture and changing the culture, it's with the aim of getting people to talk and be open about their mental ill health before it becomes a real problem for them. So the effect of COVID-19, I kind of wanted to ask the question to you guys and see what challenges has COVID-19 brought to your workforce. Have you heard of more people sharing that they have mental health problems at the moment, or just sharing more concerns? Yeah, I guess I wanted to see what everyone thought, and I'll open it up to you guys.
Claudia, just interestingly, we had a presentation yesterday from the incoming president of IOSH, and he was picking up specifically on how we support people who are coming back into the workplace following COVID. So it was trying to, look at all of the different ways in which COVID may have impacted on people's anxiety levels, what kind of experiences people might have had during lockdown, and then trying to understand how that might translate in the working environment once they had returned back into work. And obviously there's two elements to that in terms of understanding how we support people who are physically coming back to work after furlough, and also how we support people who might be continuing to work remotely, and understanding that there might be two different kind of needs around all of that. So it's a really interesting presentation that covered a slightly different aspect of COVID, health and safety, security for workplaces. So I don't know if there's anything specifically that Mates in Mind potentially have looked at in terms of how you bring people back into a safe, secure workplace, post-pandemic, really.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one, because every organization has a certain way of handling things like this, and different relationships that they have with their employees. I know that we have sort of encouraged supporters to create some sort of plan for their employees, and communicate that really well with them. I think at the moment everyone's feeling a bit lost and sort of not sure entirely what to do. There's so much uncertainty. The more you can make certain and timescales and communicate that really clearly with your staff, I think that's really, really key. But also understand that and make it known to your employees that you are there if they have any concerns, if they're struggling at the moment, and really open up that conversation with them. Don't be scared to have that conversation, because it may be that at the moment especially you're going to be having that conversation a whole lot more. So it's just about being prepared. I guess the more confident you feel having conversations about certain anxieties that people have coming back to work, the better that's going to go, rather than you feeling anxious about that conversation, they're not feeling very well in themselves, and then it becomes more tricky.
There's a couple more comments that are kind of coming through now about particular issues around the practicalities of employees feeling anxious because of being delayed in coming back to work, and obviously the financial concerns that kind of has on those particular individuals. And also, I guess, the differences with those people who can come back to work and other people who can't, because they can't work from home, they have to be back at work, and then the frustration that kind of causes as well, in terms of people understanding where employees are, I guess, in terms of whether or not they're ready to come back to work. And then a further point coming back on the need of adopting technology in a very quick time frame that potentially could have been challenging for people as well. So there's a few good points there in the chat function that are coming through.
Definitely, that's a really good one about the tech side of things, because everyone's just suddenly been thrown onto this virtual world, and for some people that will cause quite a lot of anxiety. They may not have been that tech savvy to begin with. We've had to do it also quickly as well, that there may not have been all of that training around these new processes that we're having to try and get accustomed to. So I think a good thing is to do, especially at the moment, is we kind of encourage people to do things like staff surveys and see what, and risk assessments and that sort of thing, and just see what people have concerns around, because then you can actually tackle it and be more efficient with it. But yeah, and it definitely, things like that kind of get forgotten about, actually, the technical side of things. With regard to knowing sort of where to get the support and things like that as well, it's always worth physically having kind of posters and sheets up in the office or on site or something with helpful phone numbers for people. It always needs to be sort of really readily available. But also, I think the line managers and the all kind of managers and HR professionals and everybody, health and safety managers, it's good if everyone knows where to refer people onto if they need help, and they may have that conversation with them. It's quite serious, and you think you could do with maybe a little bit of extra help that I'm not trained to help with. So it's good to know exactly where to signpost to, basically. So make sure all your workforce is aware of that list, basically. I think someone kind of answered this as well, as sort of, as an organisation, how have you dealt with these changes and issues? So it's something to think about when people are returning to work now, to put some sort of structure in place, but also check in with people as well really regularly. Often people don't disclose mental health issues, but if you ask someone, then, and you open up that conversation, then it can kind of be disclosed that way. So I just thought it'd be interesting to sort of, so what our team has observed in the last few months. So we take inbound calls from people. Some are employers from different organisations wanting some advice, but also we get people sometimes call in, just generally some employees will just ring in for a bit of help. So the sort of things that have come up in the last few months, I think earlier on in the year, it would have been the first 4 points here. So really it was more business continuity concerns, whether they would survive this time at the moment. Also with redundancies and job security, of course, that really comes up very regularly. Loss of earnings, especially people, who are sort of working hand to mouth and self-employed, and those sort of people we've had quite a lot of calls from. Working from home, so maybe they've never worked from home before, and it seems like something so trivial, but it does, especially if someone doesn't have quite the sort of, they don't feel their home environment is suitable for working. That can be really tricky, and that needs to be kind of spoken about with people, make sure they're comfortable. Of course, in the construction industry, worries about projects not being finished on time, put on hold. We've had a lot of HR professionals and managers seeking advice. I think there's the second point says there's been an increase in mental health conversations. We just don't talk about mental health enough until it's too late. This is the sad kind of reality of it, especially in the construction industry. We're already dealing with a vulnerable group of people anyway. Obviously, it's male dominated. We know that men aren't as kind of readily open about mental health. We know that they're away from their families, sometimes for extended periods. They're battling the elements. So there's a lot of things that make this group of people higher risk, which makes it even more important to really tackle mental health within the business. So, what are your responsibilities as an employer? So, obviously, as an organisation, we have a legal duty to protect our employees from stress at work by undertaking risk assessments but then also acting on that and checking in with people, measuring if the risk has kind of subsided. So that's at an organisational level, but also within departments and at an employee level as well. Leaders, when you talk, others listen. So it's really important that the leaders in the business are really setting an example for everybody else. This shows you're engaged, this shows you're committed to changing the culture and committed, to mental health. Ensure you get some extra mental health training if you feel you need it. It can be a really good idea to kind of upskill some of your line managers, any managers within the business. Just means you're better prepared, really. And also just generally make sure you're starting the conversation with people and people are aware that you're not afraid to broach it, making all the help in the company that's kind of readily available. So if you have an employee assistance program, so that's a counsellor that's neutral to the company, who people can call, your employees can use, and it's a service to help them with any issues, so financial, relationship, drug and alcohol, absolutely anything. And that's a really good thing to kind of implement and bring into your organisation. And when we say start the conversation, what we really mean is it's as easy as just asking, are you okay? You may not get the sort of the truthful answer the first time around, so that's why we always say it's good to ask twice. If someone is hesitant when you say, are you okay, and they go yeah, if you ask again, quite often you will get the real answer, and it sometimes makes people reflect on if they actually are okay as well. So yeah, always encourage that. So I thought it'd be useful to sort of show you our approach to it. So we want to get away from it being kind of a box ticking exercise. I think sometimes it can be tempted just to put up some posters or run a training session and think everything's going to be okay. Really, you need to kind of tackle the issue from all angles, every level of hierarchy within the company. So this is things like changing the culture, organizational culture, making the commitment to change and really communicating that to your staff. Communicate with your workforce so they feel it's an open workplace. We've heard of organizations sending out newsletters and things like that. Those things are really quite nice as like a regular, if you need this help, then this is where you can go, or announcing, okay, we're going to hold a webinar this week, or whatever it may be. Provide training and awareness. So this is important when we talk about having those conversations, especially if you're confronted with a crisis conversation. If someone's at the point of a mental health crisis and they open up to you, it's quite important, I guess, that you know where you can signpost them to, where they can get help, and sort of the things to say, the things to maybe avoid saying. So it's all just to make you feel comfortable having that conversation, but also them feel supported as well. Offer professional support. That's when we talk about kind of the employee assistance program. You may have a mental health nurse visit your kind of site or offices every so often, and have like a sort of walk-in kind of service. We've heard of companies doing kind of health checks as well, which you can use a mental health nurse for, where they will just have a little conversation with someone and just make sure they're feeling okay. Starting the conversation. So yeah, just dive in, have that conversation. Don't be scared of it. It's always going to benefit someone. And even if someone is absolutely fine and you've just checked in on them, they will appreciate it. So it's just good it's a good practice to get into. Line managers know how to support. So we've kind of been through that. So they feel comfortable, maybe upskilling them a little bit. Talk about mental health from the top as well. So show that engagement. And this, I thought, would be useful to include maybe some takeaways and some ideas around things that you could look at within your organisation. So this kind of shows the recommended actions that we will provide to organisations. and kind of the order that we address everything in. I think the key things here are really to assess what processes you have in place at the moment. Make sure you have that baseline measurement. Then you can create a strategy from that. So you can agree a plan, get the relevant departments included, whether that's HR, a director, it might be a health and safety manager, whoever it is. Really flesh out that plan, and then how you're going to roll that out to staff, how you're going to communicate that to them. And that really helps with the commitment side of things as well. It looks like you're committed to really tackling mental health. And not only, I guess, look at if you've got an employee assistance program, or you've got mental health first aiders, but really look at the usage behind it and the kind of uptake. Are staff engaging with it? If they're not engaging with those things that you've put in place, then it kind of defeats the point. So it's really important to get that data back, analyze that data, and see, you know, if staff maybe aren't sharing and they're not using the EAP service, etc. We've seen the sort of statistics of people who do have mental health issues underlying going on at the moment. So it's likely they don't feel they can share that. They're not kind of reaching out for that help there. So that's sort of something else then you kind of would look at there. It's all about making your kind of current provisions that you have in place at the moment just really effective. And of course, these are some other things that can impact individuals, but you can kind of use within your organization. So create the plan, communicate it well, have those open conversations, monitoring mental health and well-being, do those staff surveys, maybe do the sort of look at exit interviews and see how people are feeling when they leave the company. And how, you know, that can sometimes be quite telling to look at those. And then, of course, in recruitment and ongoing processes as well, people with poor mental health are put off by a job that you're advertising because they've sort of done some digging and they don't think that it's, especially in construction, if they feel they're going to be taken care of and supported, I think people are a bit more savvy to that now, and they will do their research into the company. So just make sure it's really kind of inclusive of everybody, and isn't turning anybody away. So we've seen that 55% of individuals have not spoken out about mental health problems at work, which can be quite surprising to employers. I think also when you look at things like staff surveys across the business, these are sort of things that come up that sometimes you're not quite aware of. And it can be for a number of reasons. It can be they don't feel comfortable discussing their problems at work. They want to deal with it alone. Perhaps they have their own coping strategies, like going to the pub after work and having a few, and that's kind of working for them. So they're not wanting to speak out to anybody. They think they're sort of dealing with it. They don't feel there's anyone they can speak to about it, and they don't want to involve others in their problems. So they may think that it's kind of a burden to somebody else. Especially, I think, with COVID at the moment, I think everyone's aware that everyone's quite stressed and anxious and is getting frustrated. And I think that doesn't help the situation, because then they're even more likely to kind of hold on to that problem, because where everyone's struggling, I don't want to put it onto them as well, make things worse for them. So the next kind of exercise, I guess, is I think it'd be useful to kind of for everybody to think about somebody they know very well outside of work. So build up kind of that image of them in your head, the way that they speak, the way that they move, the things that they like doing, the things that you do with them, and those sort of activities. Do you think you would be able to tell if something wasn't quite right or they were struggling? I think that's I won't ask everybody, but I think that's like a good thing to do, is just, would I be able to tell? Because I think a lot of time you would have no idea until you had a conversation with somebody. But here are some kind of signs that we've put together that somebody isn't okay at the moment. In terms of feelings, they may be restless, agitated, tearful, not wanting to talk or be with people, using drugs or alcohol to cope with feelings, and not replying to messages, not being very sociable. In terms of work and the work environment, recent inability to concentrate on their work or complete any of their work, and then maybe a new pattern or unexplained lateness or absences. I think it's a real tricky one, because it can sometimes seen, if there's like a sudden decline in somebody's work or they're not turning up, it can be seen as kind of, oh, they can't be bothered, or they're being lazy at the moment. And they're negative terms, but it may be that they can't be bothered or they're feeling lazy, but that's due to some underlying mental health problem that you're not aware of. So it's always worth thinking about, rather than kind of, and sort of exploring that with them. And hopefully when you're aware of the problem, then you can create a plan, and then you can sort of help them along. So this is just a case study I've included. So it might be useful to see the kind of the impact of introducing a mental health wellbeing plan or program into your organization. So we speak to a lot of people that haven't got together any sort of strategy or plan, and that's quite common. But the results that we see are good. So we started working with Tideway at the end of 2017. So you can see there, 2018 and 2019, we did some surveys with them. Well, they did some internal surveys, and the feedback obviously was more positive each year, as you can see. And more than 2,000 people participated in that. Another issue is sometimes with these surveys, it's another problem we find is people don't have good uptake on those. So that's something to kind of explore as well. Sometimes you can send out the surveys and they don't get many back. What's important here to note, so Tideway have put in a huge push and effort on this. They've really dedicated a lot of their time to tackling mental health. And the payoff is clear when you look at the statistics here that they got through. So 84% of people responded positively to how Tideway is addressing mental health. We've got a really high side there. 87% agreed that their manager cares about their health and well-being to any extent. And I'll let you read through the others. I won't go through them all. But year on year, there was definitely an increase in kind of staff overall kind of happiness with how things were going and their opinion of Tideway, which is really, really important. And that was from Steve Hells from Tideway. And what's important, I think what's key here is what the evidence does tell us is that happier staff who feel valued are more engaged and productive at work. And that's so true. So I've got kind of 3 takeaways, because you read all of this and you hear about it and you think, what can you actually do? I think 3 immediate things that you can do is, firstly, show that you're visibly committed to promoting positive mental health. Managers are informed, listen to, and are open to having conversations with their staff. If they're not confident with those conversations, try and sort of get that information first and then look at how you tackle that. Some may be absolutely fine. You may have mental health first aiders who are also managers, and they're fine, but look for any gaps basically in any people that are really uncomfortable with that sort of conversation. And then lastly, individuals are self-aware and feel they can ask for help or know where they can find help. So this is some support services that you can use. These are the ones we kind of recommend, the kind of best ones that we've found. In particular, the Construction Industry Helpline, because that's run by the Lighthouse charity, and it's specifically around construction. So that's a really good one to communicate to your employees. Okay, so I'll open up to any questions now. I've also put my email address up there. If you want to ask any questions privately, then feel free to pop me over an email or give me a call. But if not, you can use the raise your hand function or the chat as well. So if there's any questions, go ahead, I'll do my best.
It's Wayne Russell from Sabelco. You mentioned, Claudia, about spotting the signs, which I thought was quite a good model. But I think, with many of us, working remotely now and working, away from our teams, that spotting some of the signs is not always so easy. So, have you got any thoughts on how we can do that remotely and different techniques?
We usually say if people are working remotely, it's good to do, I know it's not the best, but do kind of those Teams sort of calls. It's good to have video on calls as well. So if you can and people feel comfortable with that, it's a good thing to encourage putting your video on when you're speaking to someone. There's some of the signs that it's a lot harder, but you may be able to figure out over video, or there may be a change in their voice. They just sound a bit more dejected. If there's also people aren't attending things like meetings or we had for a little while sort of a tea break, and then we had it was like a Zoom meeting, but it was everyone just sat and had a cup of tea for 10 minutes or so. If someone's very quiet in those sessions, then it's worth everyone kind of following up with that person. Even if you're not a close peer, I think that's what some people are afraid of almost, is I don't know them very well, so is that going to sound a bit weird? It's very unlikely that someone's going to it's going to make someone feel hugely uncomfortable if you just ask if they're okay. It's usually really, as I said, it's very appreciated. It is a tricky one, and you kind of only know a lot of those through having conversations. You're not to know if they are going to the pub each day and or sat drinking at home and throwing them back like all evening. Like you kind of not to know until you speak to people. So I think it's more important than ever now to not shy away from communicating and really encourage it within the teams. Just make it really, really normal. But yeah, it's tricky. I understand.
I think the video suggestion I think is a great one, and I think I try to lead by example and do that and make people feel comfortable with using the video, which I personally find helps. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
With the video as well is I think we've tried to normalize in our team. If you look rubbish and you look like you've just rolled out of bed, or you've not slept well, and your face is all puffy, whatever, it's okay, it's fine. And I think we kind of try to normalize that. I think quite a lot of people have, which is good. And also if you have background distractions and dogs barking and whatever, it's okay, it's fine. As long as you've got, we all need interaction, and we haven't got that time where we're going to each other's desks and speaking to each other. So this is all we've got. So just got to do with it what we can, really. Were there any more questions from anybody?
Well, I'm from Kent, representing Burger in Sandpits as a small group with sand and gravel quarrying, recycling, haulage, etc. Now, it's all very nice listening to. Certainly, I'm not quite sure why we are seeing the presenter, Claudia, listed as Mark Jones, which is a bit disturbing.
It's worrying for me.
Well, I think more worrying for Claudia, I think.
Oh, I didn't even notice that, so thanks.
Well, I'm surprised no one else has. But it's the practicalities of it all, which we don't really get down to talking about. It's all very well, all these nice presentations and what we should and shouldn't do. But when my view is that someone who is stressed or has a mental problem more likely to cause the accident that we dread and have nightmares about. But if you assess someone that has obviously a problem from either home or financial or whatever, there's very little in the presentation which actually gives you some practical help in what you should do. This guy might be driving a 20-ton machine or a 30-ton machine or bigger, and he's worried about his home life. He's obviously distracted. He could cause a major accident to himself or to someone else. Now, if you do that risk assessment, what practical things can you do? Do you say, well, I can't let you drive this machine anymore? You've got to go and see a doctor. You've got to go and seek help. You've got to take yourself to the doctor and obtain a sick note. I mean, there's no practical help in what the manager should do in these circumstances. It could be quite remote from head office. In our case, we don't have a big HR department to deal with such things. I mean, if you're working for a Cemex or a Hanson or someone like that, you've got an army of people in HR which you can call upon to give you that assistance. But the small producers, and we've got a lot in Kent, don't have that ability and facility and help. So, from my point of view, I would like some practical help on what you should do when you find that you do have a problem in a particular isolated workforce. Maybe an operation with only 2 or 3 men there, a recycling operation, which we've got several of, again, operating substantial machines, screening equipment, etc., etc.
When we talk about training and that sort of thing, that's where that can really help individuals. Is they obviously this I can't sort of go through everything that's in these sessions, but they do tend to be quite in depth, and they give you all the resources and tools you need. But I think generally, if you had a problem like that, it's a case of having, the most important thing is starting the conversation with that person. And
well, we've done that. Let's say we've done that. We've had the conversation. Yeah. We find that he's stressed and he's driving this bloody great big lorry truck, we'll say. What do you do to him? Just say, we can't let you drive today, young man, because we think you're too stressed. And what do we do? Do we send him off to see a doctor? What are the practical? I mean, has anyone in the room actually had this practical problem? I mean, it's all very well people going on training courses, but when there's a problem there, you can't send somebody off on a 10-week training program.
No.
Claudia, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to interject here. So I don't think you know me, Robert. Adam Daniels, head of operations for Sibelco. First of all, your comment about the big operators having rafts of people to come and help, I think is misplaced. In the UK, we've got 370 people working in the business, and we've got 2 people in HR. And HR's job isn't to manage the situation or come into these situations. It falls to all of our feet. And in the scenario you give, I think the only practical answer we can probably come to is you have to manage it according to the situation. If you've got someone who's that stressed that you don't feel comfortable they should drive the machine, then under the quarry regs, you don't let them drive the machine. Whoever's your 81C on that day or 81D with responsibilities needs to stop the job. And then I think, as Claudia's done, these areas we can point people to for them to get help and sort of resource for that. But I don't think in a session like this we're going to be able to answer your question, Robert.
Yeah, I think it's a case of, obviously it's case by case basis, and reading the situation. And that's where that's the only reason I mentioned training, is because you can have that confidence in, okay, if this happens and this gets said, this is what I do. I think by having a conversation with someone, so that side of things is good, because hopefully you can prevent it even happening. I know at this point in this scenario it's happened, but it is absenteeism, and really they shouldn't be in work, but there must be a reason that they have come into work, and there's some sort of pressure there that has made them think, I can't stay at home even though I'm really ill. And people have find it a lot easier not going to work with like a bad back or sort of a physical ailment than a sort of admitting that I've got depression, I'm really, really feeling low, I can't concentrate, I can't sleep. So it's about kind of not, hopefully it not getting to that point, but if it does, it's always worth, you can ask them, do you, are you speaking to your GP? Have you spoken to your GP? Are you having any counselling? And it depends on your relationship and how, I guess, open the culture is at your organisation. But hopefully there's when you start to get answers, and then, involve the relevant people. If you need to speak to, if you have HR, speak to HR. But generally it's about making those reasonable adjustments for people as well. So if they're not well enough to be on site that day, you do have kind of that legal obligation to make those adjustments for them, and maybe they have to be at home that day, maybe they have a lighter workload moving forward. It's trying to work with people, I guess.
Referring back to your statistics, I think it was something like 57% have indicated that they do have some form of stress, that there aren't more practical solutions available. But but thank you for your.
Yeah, I think it's a wider issue as well. It's not just in the workplace, it's people aren't addressing their own mental health straight away, and it can take a bit of time for people. So it's kind of a much wider issue as well. But as long as an employer you're doing everything that you can, and the places you can signpost to, and how to speak to them, maybe you need a bit more awareness and education around, if someone has agoraphobia, for instance. That's quite a common one, I think, that's come out of lockdown. Just thinking, okay, I don't know anything about that as a mental illness, so I probably need to look into it a bit more. So I can sort of better have that discussion with them.
And that was one of the reasons for wanting to hold a session like this, because we never traditionally have. It was brought to sort of our attention, and we're all very practical people in the quarrying industry, and so normally, let's say we'll have a meeting like this, we'll talk about belt scrapers, and at the end of it we'll have 3 solutions for stopping spillage using belt scrapers. The difference with mental health is that I don't think there is any one solution for any situation. And often, the thing we've learned in the business with the work we've done is trying to copy and paste a solution from somewhere else to a situation that's arrived that day. It does more harm than good. And the key is, the major positive is being on a session like this just to try and learn a little bit more so we can identify it, and then trying to resolve any situations as we go. And as a resource, Robert, is the IOQ is here. You've joined in today, and this goes for everyone. And I'm sure that Wanda and Sarah and the others, if we did come across a situation where we didn't know what to do, they'd help us in the right direction. It's plant's dead easy, isn't it? We know what to do with plant. We know if we've got a hydraulic problem, we phone Pertec or someone like that. We know if we've got a tyre problem, we phone TNC. But when someone turns up on a Tuesday afternoon and says, I'm a bit stressed because my dog's barking and my computer don't work and I'm not being able to get everything, it's much more difficult to resolve. But I think the first step is that we're holding sessions like this, and really positively, we've had 36 people join, which I think is a record, isn't it, Mark, for about the last 2 years for a technical event.
Certainly is, Adam.
No. But it's a good question, Robert. It's a good question. It has provoked the conversation we wanted.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I think that's what I mean with these sort of presentations, and even when you're kind of in training sessions and things, it can feel a bit like, but what do I do? But what is the practical, if I understand about mental health and I have all that understanding, I have all that awareness, and what do I actually do if someone is in front of me and they're in crisis? It's a tricky one, but I think it's just the things we've discussed really, and getting familiar with the contact, the support services I flagged up. So just being aware that you can, refer someone over to the construction industry helpline. Quite often people just want someone to listen. So that's really essentially that's the most important thing. It's just that they're heard, they're under, someone is empathetic with them, and they feel that someone has listened to them and taken that time with them. And that's what we find when we have these crisis calls and people calling in, they just want someone to listen. So it's sometimes about putting to the side, well, normally this goes wrong and then I need a practical solution. And it's more about what that person needs, I guess, at the time. So it's, the tricky one.
Again, Claudia, I think it's a real sort of stark remark there. That's someone to talk to, but often that's a little bit of a faceless person to talk to. From my own experience within industry, when we've pointed people in the direction of those helplines, which aren't specific to any companies, the ones you've shown, they're open to everyone. Having that conversation, because again, another point, a good point that's been raised. Sometimes it's the same three people you see every day, and having that conversation with them is much more difficult than having a conversation with someone down the phone.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely.
There's some people on this call have to talk to me every day, and you can imagine that they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk to me if they don't have to.
Yeah, see, from my own personal experience, I took I'm a mental health first aider with an EPC, and before actually taking the course, I was like, oh no, I have no confidence in how am I going to approach somebody. But having done the full course, it's an eye opener, and it's given me the confidence to spot signs and actually approach something that I've known for many years, and because I've highlighted there is a problem, and further down the line it's helped that person. But the main thing for me was giving me the confidence to act and the tools how to approach it. And then, to be honest with you, I surprised myself, from the course. It's well worth it. It was well worth it.
No, it is good. Is that the mental health first aid, the 2-day one that runs?
I think we did it 4 days, I think we did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are good. I know that they're doing some at the moment, but they're doing a few days in between, because I think a Zoom session for 2 days being sat in front of a camera is going to be exhausting. So I think they're spacing it out now. So you get a bit of a break in between each day. Yeah, it's worth doing.
Absolutely well worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's my experience. I thought, I'm glad I did it. It helps one person. It's well worth it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's good to get even a couple of mental health first aiders in your business somewhere. Is gonna, as you said, it may help one person, but it's helping one person.
I did get one reaction, and they went, "You." Why? Yeah. And this is a thing I think as well. It's maybe in more industries that are kind of more female dominating things. I think it's more when we speak to people, they'll say, I'm like the mother hen, or like it's quite like maternal and looking after people, and then those people tend to go through the training. But it's good to have people scattered throughout the business who at least are a little bit trained, have a bit of knowledge around it.
just to kind of reiterate that, and as well as the key points of contact that Claudia put up that are there for everybody, obviously as IQ members, you do also have IQBF, who will also signpost and help for anybody who's suffering with any kind of, you know, stress or crisis in their life. Wanda is there to listen, and in fact that point that was made just a minute ago about, you know, just having somebody there to listen, you know, I was kind of overwhelmed by some of the responses that Wanda's had to former IQ members recently who through lockdown literally had no human contact whatsoever until a letter from Wanda came through the door, and it prompted them to pick up a call. And it's just amazing just how much people are suffering, even with basic things like isolation and loneliness, because they don't have that human contact. So there's all these factors, I think, that you know, things that we need to talk about and need to address, really. So I don't know, wonder if you want to pick up on any of that just before we finish for the afternoon.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. It has been incredible, the reaction that we had from families that are out there. And, you know, there's we've had something like, we started off with about 4 people that I was in touch with quite regularly, and now we've got about 35, just having sent out this letter. And I've got lots of people who have, as Sarah said, you know, haven't had or have had very, very little contact with anybody throughout the lockdown period, which, you know, isn't going to help anybody's mental health, is it? Let's face it. So, you know, I've kind of agreed to do ongoing phone calls to these people, just to sort of give them another person to talk to, you know, just to sort of catch up with how they are. And I'm very happy to do that for any other members that you know of that perhaps need that help, or Robert, as you were saying, if, you know, if there's particular people within your workforce who are stressed, ask them to give me a ring. You know, I'm very happy to talk to them and to, you know, have a chat, and, you know, maybe more of a personal approach in terms of the signposting, rather than them going directly to a cold, you know, sort of helpline that they're not really sure of. Please do put them in touch with me first. And, you know, I can maybe do a little bit of an assessment in terms of what the wider needs are. And that's something as well that I found with the previous members and their families that I've had contact with, is they are now approaching me with various issues because I've developed that relationship with them, whereas initially they didn't know me from Adam. And I think this is a problem that we've had throughout, really, is that you know, it's like you say, it's the faceless side of things, isn't it? And not really knowing who they're talking to, and sometimes they don't want to talk to people they know really well, because it's, you know, it's still one of those issues that it's very difficult to talk about. But please do refer anyone to me, and I will help them as best I can. I don't know the answer to everything, but I might know somebody who does. So yeah, I'm here.
You know what, Wanda? I might send Mrs. Daniels to speak to you, because she's at the opposite. So she's not lonely. She's fed up of seeing me every day.
If she needs to chat, it's fine. Give her my number.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to, if that's the case, let's take the opportunity to thank Claudia very much for your time and efforts. Much appreciated, very informative. And like I said, record attendance, so this seems to be working. So thank you, Claudia, once again.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, and again, if anyone wants to email any questions over, then yeah, it's in the presentation, so I'm happy to answer any other concerns or questions or anything like that.